So right off the bat, to get us started, Baden, you want to give us a summary on what this film's about?
For sure. So, essentially, there's a character called Joe. He's got a barber shop, and he's mixed up in sort of like criminal activity. He's running numbers.
It's kind of like this illegal gambling. One of the characters describes it as like this section of Brooklyn's stock market, like a stock exchange.
Oh, like an underground kind of.
For lower income people. Yes, he runs the numbers outside of the barber shop. He occasionally, the people who make the numbers, which we'll get into a little bit later, have them keep money, and so he has to go deliver it. But instead, he takes all the money and tries to flee with it. And the opening part of the film is basically them killing him. But Zachary, who was kind of like his understudy as the barber shop, and also he worked with him, he doesn't want to close the barber shop. His wife Donna wants it to close because of all the controversy, but he wants to keep it open because cutting hair is the kind of best thing he does.
Yeah.
And over the course of the film, we see Zachary kind of succumb to the corruption of this numbers game.
There are a lot of themes in it. For an hour,
Yeah.
I think it actually has quite a dense amount of themes and a lot of like really memorable characters.
Yeah, I want to talk about the opening sequence because I really liked how the opening was handled.
Totally agree, yeah.
So, to kind of set the scene, there's like this crime noir vibe to this film. Like the music, of course, like the...
Yeah, because it's got a kind of jazzy soundtrack because his dad did the score.
Yeah.
Like trumpet, piano, that sort of stuff.
And it kind of settles you into this feeling like, oh, everything's going to be okay with the music, but while like awful things are happening.
Yeah, which is like a staple of noir.
Yeah, so Joe's kind of going outside of his shop. He gets taken by these two guys, and they bring him to like, I think it's the side of like the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, it's by the river.
Yeah, and they're asking like where the money is, and they tie cement bricks to like his body,
and
knock
chuck
him
him
out,
into the
and just
river.
chuck him into the river.
Horrible way to go. But like the scene itself, I think, is really well shot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think everyone acts really well in it.
Yes.
I think all the actors are really good. I think the dialogue's great.
There's some great lines.
Really,
in this
really
movie.
good stuff.
There's this one great line. It's about Thaddeus, the troubled kid who Donna makes Zachary take in to kind of like, you know, make sure he stays out of trouble, to give him a job. And Donna says he needs direction. And Zachary says Rikers Island is that way.
There was one line that I wasn't like super sure about. It was Zach was sort of outlining to his understudy Thaddeus. He was like, oh, these are the different type of heads, you know. He felt his head and he's like, you have a lumpy head.
Yeah.
There are like egg heads and whatever heads.
Square heads.
Square heads,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then Thaddeus is like, what about dick heads? And then there's like a silence. Like there's no response from Zach at all. And then he just like sits down and they never acknowledge it.
It's so funny.
And I was like, ooh, that joke did not land at all.
There's another thing. It's when the business is failing, like these two missionary women, they come in and they're like, Jesus is coming any day now. And he's like, I understand that, but I gotta pay my rent.
Yeah, there is good dialogue. And I don't know, I think Zachariah was like such a fun lead to follow.
Yeah.
Like he's trying his best. He's like kind of quippy. He's sharp-witted.
Exactly.
But he's also like very humble and loyal.
So the interesting thing is, again, he just wants to cut hair, and he wants to keep Joe's legacy, even if that legacy is kind of corrupt.
Interestingly, and this is something that his wife brings up as well, it's not just that he wants to cut hair, it's that he wants to specifically do it in like this older style, like this classic style. Because at one point his wife sort of comes over and is like, hey, check out this flyer I have from like a different place. It's like, check out these interesting styles they're doing. People are really interested in curls, right? And he's like, I refuse. Because it's the newer style of hair, I guess, and he wants to do the classic style.
He's very set in his old ways.
Exactly, yeah. And she's like, why are you so stubborn? And I think that is like another sort of theme in this film, like this sort of old versus new, letting go of like the older style, the tried and true, and like evolving.
Yeah.
And his refusal to evolve, and how that's his downfall, I think.
Because basically what happens is, like you said, his refusal causes him to accept running the numbers game.
It's the only way to keep the business alive.
And this introduces probably one of my favorite characters in this film.
Oh, yeah.
And his name's Nicholas Lovejoy, and he's like this very well-dressed crime boss, essentially.
Yeah. I got a real Kingpin vibe from him.
Yeah, he talks in this very particular way.
Here I am providing jobs, helping the community. The mafia and the cops in my shit there.
It's like the kind of Wall Street business speak almost.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's a bit posher than everyone else.
And so he talks about the numbers, and the way he talks about it is like this very like moral high ground, like I'm doing this for the good of the people. Like he says essentially,
The numbers is a poor man's stock market. I provide a strong economic base here in the community. I give hope where there is nothing but despair.
And he gives what he calls hope. But again, it's just gambling.
It's a gambling thing, right? But it's an interesting ideology for him to have.
And it's just a very interesting subversion from what you think a crime boss is going to be in, like, a gangster movie, because that's kind of what it is.
And that's one of the things I think is also alluring for Zach, right?
Yes.
Is when Lovejoy first meets him, he's even like, I think you're surprised to find that I'm a black man.
Yeah.
Because obviously he has a reputation on the streets as like a businessman or, you know, someone with a lot of money. And so he's like, you're surprised that I'm black, aren't you?
His entire shtick is an act.
Yeah, much like a politician.
Like, there's this one scene, I don't know if you remember this, where he visits Zachariah and Donna
at his
their
home,
house,
yeah.
right? It's portrayed like, oh, I'm being nice because, you know, you're opening my business. He gives his wife flowers and I think, like, chocolates or something. But literally what it is, it's to gain leverage.
It's a threat, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the ending.
So what happens is, literally, Zachariah does the same thing as Joe, essentially.
Yep.
Nicholas Lovejoy's men, they come in and they're like, keep this money, we'll come back tomorrow, we just need you to, like, hold
Basically,
on to
like, someone's won.
Yeah.
So you need to hold on to this suitcase of money until they come by to pick up their winnings.
And he sees the money, and he's like, yeah, I'm skipping town to Atlanta.
And it's not entirely random. Like, his wife earlier in the film expresses how, like, she wants to get out of the city. And so I guess he feels like this is his chance to maybe do right by her.
So he goes, buys a first-class ticket, and interestingly enough, I'm not sure about this, but I swear he wears the same jacket as Joe in the beginning.
Oh, really?
I think so.
Yeah, he's basically taking on the same fate as Joe.
Yeah, and so he gets a call from Donna, and Donna's like, oh, Nicholas is over. Like,
Yeah.
is everything okay? And then he realizes, oh, shit.
Yeah, like, she hasn't left the house. He was expecting her to meet him at the airport, but Nicholas got to her first.
So he goes back, basically explains everything almost.
Turns over the money.
Yeah, and then he's furious, and he's like, I'm not running numbers anymore, pretty much. And Donna's like, you're gonna get
They're gonna kill you,
firebombed.
yeah.
They're gonna throw a Molotov cocktail through, like, your front window, and you're gonna burn alive. And there's this really tense scene, and I felt like I was on the edge of my seat, where he stays the night at the barber shop, and you're like, he's gonna get killed or something, and then he lives. Then the last shot of the movie is him and Thaddeus playing cards, like where the numbers table once was.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just zooms out, and you don't know whether he lives or dies.
Yeah, yeah. And it seems like he's kind of accepted his fate either way. He's sort of like joking about how like they're gonna come for me, and then Thaddeus is like, well, I'll be sure to take I'll take photos of your mangled, bullet-ridden body and sell them to the newspaper. And Zach is like, well, make sure you get my good side when you take the photos. Just kind of joking around a bit morbidly, but yeah, we sort of don't know what happens. Like, do Lovejoy's men go over to finish the job? Does Thaddeus live? Does Zachariah live? And it makes you think, and I think that's a really good ending.
It does cause you to think what his actual fate will be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think there's also an implication. The fact that he survives the night, to me, indicates maybe for some reason Lovejoy decided not to kill him.
Exactly.
And then you start thinking like, well, what could the reason for that be? And it's like, okay, maybe Lovejoy actually respected him in a way at the end. Is it like, what does it mean for him to live or die as well? Like, is it justice? Is it like fair because he tried to like skip out on the guy's money?
Yeah.
What is it? I don't know. I think it's better because it's ambiguous.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, honestly, at the end, you know, one of the things is, I think there's an implication that if Zach would just try out some of the newer hairstyles, he could actually get a lot more business.
Well, maybe that's what he's a representative of. The new. Because he's literally a new figure in Zach's life.
And when Zach first meets him, he doesn't really accept him. He's like, finds him kind of annoying. Like you said, he's like, Rikers Island is that way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have to deal with this kid. By the end of it, he's actually taking on this kid almost like a father figure.
Well, exactly.
Accepting new responsibility.
Because he has kind of broken out of Joe's fate at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Because he doesn't get killed.
He doesn't get killed, as far as we know.
Right. I think he does it. I don't think they come in like after the camera cuts away and like shoot him or anything. I think it works out better if what it's essentially is like he's able to break the cycle of like self-destruction.
The system.
The system, exactly.
Because then, like, he's proving Nicholas Lovejoy wrong. And, like, he's not falling for this entire orchestrated thing, right? Yeah.
The ending is supposed to sort of represent him letting go of that stubbornness.
Yeah.
And finally accepting sort of like a new way and both standing standing up for himself, but also maybe evolving as a person.
Exactly. So overall, Baden, though, what did you think of this film?
Yeah, it's funny. Like we like watching kind of funnier first films, so we can make lots of jokes about them, but this one was just a good film.
Yeah.
It's also inspiring seeing sort of like young filmmakers and what they were able to do.
Especially student films. Yeah.
Especially student films, right? Like this was obviously very low budget, but he got interesting locations.
Yep.
He got good actors. I don't know. I really enjoyed this one.
I really liked it. I highly recommend it if you're kind of looking for kind of a good genre film, I think, too.
And I think, again, what I've been impressed with all the films we've seen is like, I do get hints and I see the seeds of Lee as like a director.
Yeah.
It really is like a very good representation of him as a filmmaker, as a first film.
Now, with that being said, Baden, let's jump over to the behind the scenes.
Let's do it.
Quiet on set.